Rebecca does most of the work, and I just say my dreams and hopes, and she makes it a reality. So
any of you want to try to produce your own game, which sounds like a nightmare, but maybe you're into
I get a lot of people reaching out to me. Her strengths are perfectly mirrored mine in my head, because I'm not very organized and I'm all over the place. I'm thinking 4 games down the road.
Ethical conversation and understanding of AI aside, the board game community at large is against AI.
We're only here because people keep playing dice fights for some reason.
Like it.
I'm still shocked.
Warning, may contain board games, artificial intelligence, Woodstock games, and/or peanuts.
I am Woodstock.
Welcome back, Daniel. Welcome for the first time, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Excited to have y'all. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, but at first I want to just sow discord in your family and ask, how is it working together? Tell us a little bit about, even though we've had Daniel on before, tell us a little bit about your company and then your dynamic working together under the same roof.
I think, Rebecca does most of the work, and I just say my dreams and hopes, and she makes it a reality. So that's how I view it mainly. So maybe she'll have something different to say there.
He's being too sweet. He's being too nice because we're on a podcast together. I think we split our work pretty evenly, but it's, for the most part, I enjoy working together. Every once in a while, of course, there's times where I'm like, oh my gosh, Daniel, no. But for the most part, working together is a lot of fun, and it's something we can do together, and we always have something to talk about. I've been enjoying it.
Yeah.
How long have you all been doing Woodstock games?
Officially since 2022.
Yeah.
If you go on our website, that's what it's listed as. Founded in 2022.
Is it incorporated if you're just an LLC? I don't know.
Depends on whether you incorporated it or not.
Business.
So that'd be a limited liability corporation. So if it's a corporation that is incorporated, I don't know.
Yeah, sounds.
Do you know any
right
lawyer buddies? We'll ask them. They're the only ones that care.
I know no lawyers.
Them and the tax guys, I guess.
Yeah,
so
my tax guy is often disappointed in me.
Y'all are up in Utah, but you were gracious enough to come travel down to San Antonio, Alamo City, to have this conversation. And a big upcoming event is your new game that you're coming out with. We'll get to that. Mm-hmm. But when you decided to start Woodstock Games, was it an easy sell to Rebecca?
No.
I wasn't as great as a wife as I am now.
Yeah.
It was a hard sell. He had to work at it for sure.
Because it kind of started out, I wanted to be like a YouTube content creator, and we had just moved to San Antonio, so I'm like, I'm not going to get a job. I'm just going to make YouTube videos all the time. Which they were kind of woodworking /videos of me walking my dog and just talking about life. No one watched them. I think I maybe got a total of 48 views between all the videos I did. But I had previously, just as a hobby, came up with the one of my games, Terraform, and I was like, oh, I can start working on that. That would be cool. And then I remember halfway through the process, I was like, hey, we could open a game store and do stuff. And she's like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I was like, oh no, I'm useless.
Unfortunately, that is exactly how it went down. Mm-hmm. I just straight up said no to him when he asked, and that was actually, not to be too deep here, but a huge turning point in our marriage. At least for me it was, because I had a really big learning opportunity when that moment happened, because I said no, and then his entire countenance, face, everything just fell, and I went, oh, I need to do some thinking here. And then we actually talked about it more and talked about what he wanted, and I realized just things about our marriage that I was like, I've been too harsh. I need to open up and be more open to new ideas.
Yeah, I'm pretty like ADHD-esque, so like I'll tell you like the end of a 2-week thought process. We're gonna have a game store, but really the whole thought process was like, okay, I'm going to come out with this game, then I'm going to come out with 10 other games, and then we're going to open a little retail shop, and then we're going to sell other games. We're going to have all this product, and it's going to be great. In my head, that's 15 years down the road. All she heard was, we're opening a game store. And she's like, we can't open a game store right now. And that's not even what I wanted. But, yeah, we've learned that I'm a hard person to communicate with because I'll, like, hyper focus on random stuff. So she's like, wait, is this just happy-go-lucky thinking about stuff, or are you being serious? Like, she'll often ask me that, and I'll be like, no, this is just random bullshitting. This isn't anything. And sometimes I'm like, no, I'm being dead serious right now. But you're at the end of a 2-week thought process.
Yeah, very similar situation with me starting the podcast. A lot of brainstorming out loud that can potentially cause frustration in a partner because they don't know what is the, hey, I'm just saying it out loud to test the waters, see how it feels, versus, oh, this is happening and we're doing it this spring. And being able to communicate that is a skill. Being able to understand your partner in a way that is not easy. Doesn't matter how long you've been with someone, lived with someone, raised children in some cases. It's a very difficult thing to be able to share your true feelings. And being able to do that, seems like you guys have gotten to that point where you guys are, working together very well.
Yeah. And like her strengths are like perfectly mirrored mine in my head because I'm not very organized and like I'm all over the place. I'm thinking 4 games down the road, and she's like, why aren't we focusing on this Kickstarter that's launching in 2 weeks? I'm like, well, but this River Rats game, I've had some cool thoughts about it. She's like, you need to stop. Where one thing then the next. I'm like, but what about the next thing? Like, so she's really good at honing it in, coming, and I'm just like big vision, directions, seeing that. They're huge dreamer, realistic. That's how our she makes my dreams a reality. Didn't I start it like that? Right? Like that's the way.
The split in our marriage, especially when it comes to business, is I end up being the bad guy a lot of the time and going, that is not realistic. I'm sorry to crush your hopes and dreams, but you know what? I do that at work too to other people. So maybe,
yeah,
maybe that's just
she's getting really good at setting me down nicely. Like, actually, maybe not right now. Okay. So.
Being able to tame the lion, if you will.
Yeah.
I've actually heard that about a lot of different companies that end up being very successful. You're going to have a partnership. You got one guy that's the big dreamer. He sees the vision. And then the other guy that's business, being able to understand that vision, see the dream, but be able to turn, okay, this is realistic now, and this is what needs to happen to get to X dream. And so you have one fully released game,
mm-hmm.
and then what's in the works right now?
So essentially like the 5-year plan here is we're going to be releasing the expansion Healer Steel to Dice Fights. It's not its own standalone game. It's an add-on to the original.
An expansion?
February 4th. Expansion. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we probably won't be done fulfilling that until July or so. And once we're done fulfilling that, we'll just go into normal retail mode. Generally, you have about a year's worth of time to like tell the world about your new thing and have it still be exciting and hype. And after the year, people are like, okay, yeah, that's not new or hype. It's a year old. Sometimes less than that. And so we'll probably spend that time pushing Dice Fights. Hopefully at the end of that, we'll time it just right. In the background, we'll be finishing up Terraform, our next game, which is a 2-to-floor, like race to the finish game where wizards accidentally got turned into animals. Now you have to go pick up all your stuff. Once we release that, hopefully come 2026 March, then we'll probably be looking for going into like a really crazy adventure of maybe trying to get an outside person in and publish their game, which will be a huge learning step for me. But really, most of the things we've achieved with this company and just me in life is like I kind of got the mindset of, well, let's just see if I can do it. Like, oh, should I buy a house? Well, let's just try if I can, and if it works. And then afterwards, I'm normally like,
they actually let me do this.
They let me do it. Oh, and that just keeps happening. Like, that's exactly what happened with Dice Votes. I'm like, oh, I should just like do it. And then I did it, and I'm like, oh, I just started a company, and now I'm selling board games just to see if I could. But now I love it, so that worked out good. But after we get an outside publisher in, we're coming out with River Rats after that.
An outside publisher or outside like creator that you're going to publish
designer.
For? Okay.
Outside designer.
And so let's talk about that, because that's something that took me a little bit to wrap my head around. You not only are a creator of these board games, but I think your end goal is to be a publisher. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I am a publisher. I reached that goal.
And describe the relationship between creator, publisher, and distributor.
Yep.
And then I guess there's a retailer after that, right? So
yeah.
That's the whole like lifeline of games.
Yeah. Generally, when you go into making board games, you have to make a decision with how you want to get that game out. It's actually shockingly similar to like publishing a book, right? One, you can publish it yourself and you're just cutting out a bunch of middlemen, but then you have to you're essentially, when you publish it yourself, you're starting a publishing business. So you have to deal with manufacturers overseas, bringing it in, selling it, marketing it, creating a distribution channel that way, trying to connect with other distributors. And most board game designers actually don't want to do that. They just want to make games.
They're geeks that want to, they're the dreamers that want to just come up with stuff and let the Rebeccas of the world actually make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, I'm a part of a board game design forum. What's it called again? Do you remember?
Not now that you put me on the spot.
Oh, sorry, my bad. But anyways, it's a design forum on Facebook. It's got like almost 20,000 board game designers and people in that world that basically talk about the games they're coming up with. Mm-hmm. And if any publisher gets on there and says, hey, I'm looking for a game, you will get thousands of submissions of games all over the board, right? And so and a lot of people talk about the proper way to pitch, like, hey, you just have to pitch your game 1,000 times to 1,000 different publishers, and then you can sell it and then move on to the next one. It's a very like transient, just going to the next thing, where I didn't want to, I think I'm pretty similar to you in this way. I didn't want to relinquish control of my creative process to some other third party. And so, I even have a hard time. I quickly realized in a lot of things I can't do all this by myself, and that's why I started leaning on Rebecca a lot more. And we kind of decided that she was going to be the graphic designer for a lot of things, not necessarily doing the art, but like getting it all on the boxes and things like that. I had messed with that a little bit, but like I just don't have the time to do every facet of the job, and Rebecca kind of took that, and I had to be like, Chad, bro, chill. Like, she needs to do this and succeed. And now she's way better than I ever was at graphic designing stuff. So, yeah, I appreciate that about her.
Pretending to be a graphic designer. I am not a graphic designer.
You have put images on a product that has then been sold 1,500 times to people I think you're past pretending. Like, you're past a lot of people. Just saying, you're pretty cool.
He's so sweet.
Tell us a little bit about the first time you reached out to actually manufacture a game. You have to go through a lot of learning, I'm sure, because I don't think you had a mentor kind of walking you all through it.
No.
Where did you have to go to manufacture it? What were the lessons that you learned from that?
So I'll kind of start where I started, but Rebecca finished this. This is where I was like, oh, Rebecca's way better at this stuff than me. Because I just started Googling, and then I was like, I heard Alibaba was a thing. It's like Amazon for manufacturers in China. And so I started messaging everywhere, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I had zero patience for the slow back and forth with people in China, and sometimes communication's rough. And then finally, Rebecca took over and found good people now twice in a row. So yeah.
How did you go about that?
Well, I just Googled as well.
And don't give everyone your secrets, because we want these creators coming to you to publish. No, I think there's a lot of you kind of almost have to go through this process on the publisher side, see how hard it is, and then you're okay. That's why publishers are worth it.
Mm-hmm.
That's true, and it is a lot of work and a lot of patience. So I did just start by Googling manufacturer companies. I think the main problem was Daniel was trying to look at piecing the game together, like from different sources, like get the dice from this manufacturer and the box from this place and the rulebook from here. And I went, no. I don't think that's how this works. So I pretty much just learned on a curve as I went. I definitely didn't know anything about this, nor had I in my entire life ever thought I would be doing something like this. So I just started. A lot of manufacturer companies will have a pretty clear direction on their website to go and get a free quote from them. And it's not a quick quote. No matter what their website says, it will never be a quick quote. Some of them have a form that you can fill out. Some of them you just kind of say, this is my dream and my idea. I don't know. And then you usually get an email back pretty quickly, because usually it's an automated response that first time, where it then has a more detailed form that you can fill out. And in my experience, if you respond to that one, you get moved from the automated bot to an actual account manager. Is usually they assign someone, and I think it's their entire job to talk with you continually and get the pieces, get you moving until they finally make a sale, so to say. So the process the first time of Dice Bites finding a manufacturer was, I think I messaged and went through that exact process with probably 10 plus companies. 10 might be a lot, maybe less than that.
I think that's pretty accurate. Like,
it
we were
was
talking
a lot.
to so many of them. And the frustrating part is we would like start it all out with, this is everything we need. And they'd be like, yeah, we can do it. And then they'd ask us details about everything, and then after like 3 weeks of talking, they'd be like, and we're like, yeah, and the box is going to be a cube. And they're like, oh, we don't do that. I'm like, that was like in the first sentence before we started any of this.
We can do that. We actually can't, but we're going to waste your time.
Yes,
actually, do me a quick favor, both of you. Pull up those mics just a little bit closer, almost like a fist away. That way catches your voice versus the other person's mic a little bit better.
Got it.
The one of the main pieces of that is our life and money tracker, our spin down dice, which I had no clue were going to be so incredibly hard to find.
I think most people who are listening to this are not going to know what spin down means. Do you want to describe that to us? Because the manufacturer is not the only one that had no idea what that is when I first learned about it.
So instead of the D20 with all of its sides, it's a 20-sided dice.
Okay.
So usually a 20-sided dice, the numbers are, I'm going to say randomized, but it's also the same on every exact D20. there's some sort of math that goes into figuring out where they go or something, but we wanted our trackers to be really easy to be able to track your money and your life. So a spin down is where the numbers go in order. So
if you're looking at one, you can see 2, 3,
other,
4 all around it, and you start spinning your way down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those dice, the spin down dice, are actually really prevalent in games like Magic the Gathering as your life counter. But I didn't know what they were called, and that was probably part of the problem. I called it a countdown dice. I was calling it the wrong thing because I'd never done it before, so I was using the best words, but they don't know English that well either, so if you don't call it its actual name, they're like, yeah,
they can't Google countdown dice.
Yeah, we have a 20-sided dice. We sure do.
I think I found that it kind of depends on how big the company is that you've reached out to, whether communication is going to be easy or hard with them. Because if they're a larger manufacturer, they know that their business is overseas in the U.S. Because, I mean, Daniel looked into manufacturing here in the U.S. Of course, we would want to keep our game local and buy from in our country, but that is impossible. There's absolutely no way that is fiscally possible, because he might correct me on this, but he was getting quotes from people in the country for this box being like $30 landed cost. And for anyone listening, he should probably explain this one, but your landed cost is what the game costs you to make plus shipping it to you, and that's your landed cost. Whereas we got it, I went through that process with so many different publishers to find like the price that we wanted, the better price. / I also was maybe going off of feel a little bit too. The company we ended up going with the first time was Nice Funny Games, and he was really personal in his emails and really friendly and really nice, and I really enjoyed talking to him and the feel, and he's actually amazing. His name is Ivan, or at least the name that he gives people here in the US is Ivan. And I mean, honestly, we're Facebook friends. He will send out happy holiday messages and check in with us every once in a while. He's awesome. So that was part of it.
Honestly, if you're a first time publisher,
I'm sorry, I'm gonna pause really quick. I just realized that you are sitting out of frame. Do you want to just scoot towards Daniel there?
Sure.
I just realized when we tested it, I was sitting much closer right there. And then...
me over?
Yeah, I think that's good. All right. So people watching the video, apologize about not seeing Rebecca's face for half of it. Or half the face for all of it.
That's going to be the best part of the video right there. Anyways. But yeah, in my opinion, Nice Funny Games is probably the most ideal first-time publisher manufacturer. We ended up switching away from him just because he is more expensive than other counterparts in China. So like once you're scaling up, you have to move away from Nice Funny Games. But he walked us through the process and like got us to manufacturing. We didn't know anything, and he had just like held our hand through it, and he has low minimum orders as well. And so like we could order 500, but this new manufacturing company, we have to order 1,500 minimum from them, which is a huge it's a lot more money. So like if you're going through it for the first time, like honestly, like price isn't everything. Them being able to like drag you through the process was huge, right? And I don't think with the new manufacturer, long pack games, they're really good. They're really huge. Like we've been passed between a couple different account managers, and they're like so legit. But if
we had gone to them first, all the information that they responded with would have freaked me out and totally overwhelmed, because they have everything you need. They know everything you need. They're gonna know what's better for you than you know, because I mean they're a huge manufacturer. So they will respond to your very small, simple email with, absolutely, here's 10 documents with all of this information and exactly how your art needs to be sent to us. And even as a second time going through this process, a little overwhelming. Just a little.
Yeah, Nice Funny Games was like, yeah, just send me the art files. We're like, what? Oh, yeah. Not quite the right ones. Here's a template. Just put your art on this template. Make sure it's an SVG. Okay, great. That sounds great. Here it goes. Adjust it this way. Like, yeah, they just walked us through the process. It was excellent. I'm kind of sad. But they were the new manufacturer was 1/3 of the cost.
Oh wow,
unit.
that's
So
huge.
especially when you're ramping up the number of games up to 1,500, we basically are almost paying the same amount for 500 as 1,500.
With the quality being the same, if
with the
not
quality
upgraded.
being better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I even can get to that quality, but the price would also go up that way. So, and he's like a one-man shop. He's the CEO, owner. Like, he was like sending us pictures. He's like, yeah, going camping with my family. I'm like, oh, that's sweet. I love
Definitely
camping.
a small business.
And
Honestly,
so-
I did like that
But-
part. He had a daughter as well. And then actually when we started going through the second process and getting another quote for Healer Steel, he was like, hey, my wife is pregnant too.
Oh, that's
Due
cool.
like only a couple months before you.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So maybe a
shout out
weird part of it
to,
to get connected to in my brain.
Nice,
but
funny games.
Nice, funny, yeah. If any of you want to try to produce your own game, which sounds like a nightmare, but maybe you're into.
I get a lot of people
Living a
reaching
stressful
out to
life.
me asking like, hey, give me some advice. And I'm like, well, Nice Funny Games is a nice option.
Yeah, for sure.
There are some other cool, there's like Game Crafter. That's another good source for first timers. That's like, you can do one. You can get your whole game, bunch of different things. You can just do one.
So if you don't want to turn it into a business, but you want to like get your game in your hand and play it, that'd
Yeah.
be a good
get a
option.
prototype.
Yeah, and they allow you to do like print and play. So let's say I wanted to sell dice fights, but I didn't have the capital to buy 500 to 1,000 of them, right? You can essentially list dice fights on your website, and then if someone orders it, you have it pre-made in Game Crafter, and they'll make it and send it out to the person.
Oh, that's cool.
But the cost is much higher, right? So you're probably only going to make $1 or $2 off of that game, right?
Yeah.
Whereas when you buy 500, you end up making a lot more than just that.
But it might be a good way to get a prototype for playthroughs before you figure out your final design.
Great prototype option that way. And
Yeah,
prototyping
we probably went a little
is,
too hard with dice bites the first
Yeah,
time.
I was like, let's just order 500. We'll figure it out.
Well, it worked out.
We
Yeah, it
did get
worked
a
out.
prototype with Nice
We
Funny
did.
Games, but usually
It
most
was-
people go with like one prototype on this sort of a direction with the Game Crafter. But we just went straight to a manufacturer, got their prototype, which
And this just comes from not knowing what
yeah,
we're doing.
and it does usually end up being way more expensive of a prototype if you go in with a manufacturer, just because they are built to make mass production. So making one of something ends up being like
$200.
or 600 as it was with our new manufacturer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you're looking at
Each
$600
box.
game right here in front of us.
Just the prototype.
Just the prototype.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Does that include all the artwork and everything? I guess you were doing a lot of the design yourself, right?
Yeah, so that also was a huge learning curve for us when we started with Nice Funny Games. Was we didn't realize we are supposed to do that part. We reached out to them, and we were like, this is our idea. This is what we want it to look like. And he was great. Here's the template. And I went, what do you mean? What do you mean that's the template? I don't know. I don't even have Photoshop. What am I
Yeah.
supposed to do with that?
I remember messaging him like, yeah, just put like a sword image and a shield and like a money bag and just put dice fights. And he's like, no,
That's not how it works.
you give us the art
Yes.
files.
So then we had to play catch up with actually getting art for Dice Fights.
You just
and-
do like a Fiverr, or how'd you go about that?
We went to Fiverr for Dice Fights, yes.
Okay.
And we actually have stayed with that artist as well for the expansion. We went back to him and we said we need more stuff. And he gave us updated, beautiful things. We really like him.
Where's he from? Do you recall? I know with Fiverr you don't have much
Is he Sri Lanka?
contact with them.
He
but-
might be the Sri Lanka one. We've gone with a few
Where
different.
is Sri Lanka? I've heard that name so many times. But is it
Honestly-
like Southeast Asia, maybe?
I hesitate to even
Rachel,
take a gander.
what's up? Indian Ocean.
Indian Ocean.
So, it's pretty much India.
Oh,
It's like right down.
It's an island off of India.
Okay, I wonder if they speak Indian? Showing my ignorance here. What language is spoken in Sri Lanka? Sinhala and Tamil.
I was not even brave enough to try to pronounce the names of those languages, so
I'm a brave soul.
you are. And you're a better reader than I, so that's good.
Yeah, that's something that me knowing you well, I know you're I always say dyslexic as a joke, and now that's my go-to. But I can't imagine trying to come up with a rule book being dyslexic.
That's where Rebecca comes in.
That's all me.
Yeah.
All that, yeah. So
I honestly would never have published ever without someone to write the rule book. That's why I stopped making Terraform originally, because I had made the game already, and then I was trying to put a rule book together, and I just gave up. And then
it's honestly the worst part of the entire process of making a game is writing the rulebook, and I am good with words. I used to want to be a writer. I will pat my own back and say the words I come up with on paper, writing, are beautiful and wonderful, but writing a rulebook is chaos. It's the worst.
Yeah, as someone who's familiar with games, anything that's more than just the basic like LCR, it's so important to have this one tiny specific detail, because you get a room full of people and all of a sudden you've created a blood feud because they're disagreeing, and you go to that rule book and you're like, they don't say anything about it. And then
You mean
your game,
a room full of Woodstocks?
yeah,
we are very rule. Well, we're just very passionate about our gaming, and so when it doesn't have the rule break, like the answer in the rule book, it just dissolves. We might as well just stop
And
playing
honestly,
the game.
we left a lot out of that first rule book. I gave the basics, and I didn't know to give any more, and then we published it, and we had so many people reach out on the Kickstarter. Excuse me, what the heck is the answer to this rule? And then we'd have to come
That's
up with
nice.
something maybe on the fly. I didn't say that.
I
but-
had all the answers.
I know a lot of publishers, especially newer publishers, I've felt they have like an extension on a website. So they're like, hey, here's the basic rules. We know they suck. Go to this website for a playthrough or like re-up, or really where I go is Reddit. If you, and here's a cheat code for anything, whether it's board game or not, use Google and then add Reddit at the very end of it. You're going to get a very specific forum with a bunch of responses, and they're so well put together.
Should I start a Dice Fights Reddit?
Yep.
I probably should.
Heard it here first.
Heard it here first. Great. Someone's going to listen to this and go start it, and I'm going to be like,
Well, you don't want to moderate all that stuff. Let someone else do the work for you.
Yeah, let a fan
someone
do
please
it.
reach out to me if you want to start a Reddit called Dice Fights.
I would just
Maybe
be
Jay
a part
is
of the board
listening.
game Reddit.
Board
Maybe he'll
game
do it.
specifically, you're right, but there's a more go-to forum option for board games specifically. It's called Board Game Geek.
BoardGameGeek.com.
Yeah, it's basically Reddit. It's like if they made a subreddit just for board games, but now there's every board game that ever existed. And like your ratings on Board Game Geek will really make or break. Like if you can make top 50 in the Board Game Geek, you've made it. You're selling a ton.
It's like the top 1% of the 1% of
yeah.
board games, because there's so many out there.
Like one of the first things you do once you feel like you're going to publish your game is you go make a page for your board game.
Who runs that? Is that someone you could send your game to and say, hey, try this out? Or is it more of just a forum?
It's a forum.
It's not a...
There's a lot of moderators. There are people who work for Board Game Geek, but it's not like a... I think there's very few ads. Like, you can see the couple ads, but they're always like board game ads. And I think they do like donations and stuff as well. There's also like board game trading that will happen. Like, if you have some board games, you can market for trade, and people can reach out to you and trade, and they might do like a facilitation fee on that.
You have
I like
some
that
control
rainbow.
over.
Sorry, I have to point this out because it's just funny. Welcome to the LGBTQ plus, and it says name that game, but it's GAY.
That is great.
I mean, nice gays. You always do it.
Nice gays, you always do it.
Well done.
That's becoming a remix on the shorts for sure. Nice gays, you always do it. Great. Now I said it a bunch. No.
Women
Someone's
in
gonna
gaming, rainbow BGGers. I don't know what that is. Bi, gay, and I don't know.
They're just general
You get
outreach
Geek Lobby.
stuff. That's actually one thing I love, and probably is like keeping me in board game world. Like that designer page, you'd think a bunch of designers, they're all competing over. I think it's close to 1,500 games a year get released. Board games. And so huge competition, but all of them will give you lovely feedback and just be like, I hope you succeed, here's how you can make it better, because everyone just wants a better game to play, and they want people to play games with them, so they're like so inclusive. Like like having your game accessible to colorblind people, that's a huge thing in the designer community, is like making sure that everyone can play your game. It's actually part of the reason why we went to engraved dice with these, because now you can feel all the options. So now it's accessible to blind, because I actually have had a couple like partially blind people play the old dice fights, and they like couldn't because it was screen printed.
So there's a big reason to go to the indented. What do you call them? The
engraved is what I always say.
Which is a more expensive, higher quality product, but
yeah, it's the mold cost per custom dice is sickening. It's like $600 to $2,000 a dice, depending on what it is.
And that's why the initial is so expensive, and then you can kind of scale from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Once you have the mold cost and you've ordered your initial order, the price should go down after that, because you don't have to pay that mold cost again. But that's the most expensive part about engraved dice. Otherwise, if you were to just look at the per unit cost of engraved versus screen printed, I'm not sure exactly what the difference is, but it's the mold
sizable
cost that you have to pay attention to.
So the per unit between screen printed and engraved, screen printed is actually slightly more per unit, but there's no mold costs at all. So you're saving yourself $10K plus up front, but you just pay that in the per unit, and the print will eventually fade away as
so
well.
Going molded for a small release, if you're only doing a few hundred games as a little hobby, probably cost prohibitive. It's only makes sense once you go to much larger scale.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about design real quick. That's a huge thing in multiple different industries. I know in like the craft beer industry, they hire these amazing artists to put this artwork on a really disposable can, but it helps so much with the marketing side. I've talked to you a little bit about it, but I like to go over it because right now the biggest, like, newest technology is language models, AI, ChatGPT, and all these other varieties. I once told you, I said, why don't you just get AI to create you these images? And you looked appalled. It kind of explained that to me, because that ties into the gaming community that we were discussing.
AI art. So let me start out. I actually think AI art is really cool. I think a lot of people don't understand what goes behind it, right? And because I have personally been burned multiple of thousands of dollars because of AI art, I am a little jaded about it, but I still think it's cool. So we decorate our house in board games. Like, we have them up on shelves. There's some beautiful art in a lot of board games, right? And people will buy board games solely off of the cool art on the box, and then just hope it's a good game afterwards, right? It's a huge thing. And so as a whole, there's a lot of artists who are like primarily board game artists. Like, that's where they make their bread and butter, is doing art for the board game industry. So when AI art started coming about, they essentially were like, what? Like, you're going to take our jobs away, partly, and two, like, some people think that it's stealing, like their art styles are getting stolen and whatnot. And I think that comes a little bit from not understanding the evolution of AI art, because, and I'm by no means an expert on this, but I've done a sad amount of research about it to like educate myself behind it. The OG AI art essentially was fed thousands of images, and they kind of, how it started is they got computers to identify images, identify things in an image. So you could ask like ChatGPT, what is in this photo? And they would say, it's a pigeon. And so the developers essentially said, okay, so now let's flip it on its head. Let's tell it to make an image with a pigeon instead of identify a pigeon in an image. And that was like the first bit of it. And they basically gave it thousands and thousands of images until it could essentially find a pigeon in the database of images, and here you go, this is a pigeon. And that is just straight up stealing an image from an existing piece of art. So if an artist had done that painting of a pigeon, that is straight up plagiarism, right? But that's like Gen 1 AI, right? Since then, they've essentially gone way, way deeper to the point that AI is generating its own images from scratch, right? Using like basically 47 different parameters to like generate the image, very similar to that. But where it's getting hairy now is you can be like, use this specific artist's style to make me this art. And people feel entitled to their specific style, right? Even though in real life, if I decided to do a Mickey Mouse drawing, well, Disney's probably not the right person to do this with, but if I can draw a Mickey Mouse perfect, I'm not going to get flagged for stealing that image. Well,
maybe trademark.
Trademark.
But
this is why I'm saying the the Disney one was probably not the way. But so like, what if your art style gets stolen from AI and they can just replicate it perfectly as an original image? And so it's kind of, everyone thinks they're just straight up stealing art like the Gen 1 AI was doing, but now they're creating original works, but they're stealing styles from people.
I mean, what's the difference between an AI model learning from various different styles versus an actual human being who has done the exact same thing just in a slower amount of time? They've spent their life copying other people's work, studying other people's art, and then putting that through their brain and comes out their fingers. And that's the thing that I think is a little hypocritical about being so against AI art. There still has to be an artist, someone behind that AI putting in the prompts
to direct it.
And from my experience, and maybe it's gotten much better, maybe my quality of using AI is not there, but getting to the final product is very difficult strictly using AI. For example, I wanted to make a t-shirt for our family reunion, and I put in a prompt, and the initial poster that popped up, I'm like, oh, that is perfect. But then when you zoom in, it's got none of the names wrong. Like, it's just jumbled, doesn't make sense. It does not matter how many times I tried to reprompt, it never got there. So I went to our very talented brother-in-law, Steve, and he's like, oh, yeah, let me actually get this to where you want. So it was more of a tool of like, all right, here's the image out of my brain, roughly, and then a true digital artist came in and fixed it.
That right there is how we got doomed. This is how we lost.
So ethical conversation and understanding of AI aside, the board game community at large is against AI. I'm going to break it down real simple, right? And this is a calm statement. That's not the right word I'm going for. But they want to support real artists in general, the board game community, and especially the artists who work for the board game community. Obviously, they want the jobs, not AI. So, if you break it down real simple and you just go at the face value, the problem with using AI in your board game is you will get blacklisted by the rest of the community. So what Daniel was saying was we went to a Fiverr artist for Terraform and we asked for art. Honestly, we liked what we got back. It was great. We made our first prototype on that art, and then we started showing that board game around to the community, and people kept coming back to us and saying, that looks like AI. That does not look like a human created that. And they have really good points. If you sit there and you break down what they're saying about it, we came to the same conclusion too. Yeah, there's no way this was created solely by a human artist. A lot of artists are doing AI assisted, where just like you were saying, the AI starts it and then the artist finishes it and breaks it down. But even that is not something that the board game community or the artists in it will support. So if we were to have ignored what everyone said because we liked the art, we liked the feel of it, and went ahead and published it, we probably wouldn't have done good because the community would have blacklisted us. Even if we could prove that it wasn't AI assisted or AI made, it still wouldn't have done well because of the initial assumption and the initial reaction that got out that this is AI.
Sorry, board game community, grow up. And this is not Woodstock Games speaking. This is his dumb brother who is not part of that community. I love board games, but I see it as this. I'm certain there were some guys back in the day when oil paintings were all the rage, when they came out with crayons. They're like, no, you can't use crayons and markers. That's cheating. That's not the way I've trained my whole life on this, and you're stealing all of my work. And then they came out with digital art, and you're like, well, you can't use a computer to make art. That's not real art. You have to actually
remember people dissing on digital art.
Yeah, and now that's what everyone does. It's a tool that is being used, and if you're resting on your laurels because you have a cornered market and someone is threatening you, then get good.
Yeah.
Use that tool to your benefit.
I think lots of times people just want to know. People like to support artists, right? And if you do, that's great. But lots of people are passing off AI art as hey, this is as if a person did it, right? And so then they spend their money on it thinking they're supporting the board game designer and the artist. And
which was the other problem with Terraform was, we even eventually decided to go back to the artist and try to say nicely, but also hey, we've gotten a lot of feedback that this is AI. Can you prove that it's not? Because that's not what we discussed. When we hired you, we didn't ask for AI assisted. And, we did not go into battle with this fight because it just purely wasn't worth it.
And on Fiverr.
What was the response?
The response was, no, it's not. It's not AI assisted at all. You can go into the SVG files and see the layers, but our wonderful brother-in-law Steve was the one that told us the layers is what says it's AI.
Okay.
He looked at the image and then he's like, yeah, the layers are kind of weird. It starts
with a fully formed
with
base.
The form of the animal, and then he traced it and fixed some stuff, right? And so for me, I started this whole thing with, I actually like AI art from a personal standpoint, but I didn't pay for AI art. I specifically was trying to get a real artist to do it, and then they used AI.
And that's even that's a problem with some people. Using Fiverr itself can be an argument in the in the board game community, because everyone support local.
Yeah.
Keep business in the U.S. But it goes back to the exact same thing with the manufacturing, is I cannot afford a U.S. artist. I can't do it. I have to go to Fiverr for this wonderful art that's on the box. And they gave us wonderful stuff.
We ended up switching to an artist in the U.S. Granted, we found
even Utah local.
But they're like a brand new starting out artist that wanted the experience, right? So we're paying him an experience, the worst trope ever for anyone in the artistic field. But
that's another cop out. That's just like people who are, I don't know. I think especially as Americans, we are so used to just getting everything without working for it, and that's not for everyone. I think everyone who has made it somewhere has had to put in the work, but it's like, I don't know. At the end of the day, I took economics courses through most of my college career, and it just makes sense. That's the only fair way to do it. Free market. If someone can come in and has a comparative advantage, regardless of what tools they're using, it's like saying, I'm not going to buy your newspaper because you used one of those evil printers. I need a priest to actually write down the Bible before I read it. It's like, okay, well, that sounds ridiculous, but it's that's how I see it. But I get it. I don't want, I know digital artists. Heck, our brother-in-law, I have a very good friend that did all the iaW artwork, and it's not cheap. If you get a quality person that has talent, they know what they're doing, because design is everything.
And they are worth that price.
Yeah.
No one's saying that they aren't.
But if you can't afford it, I would rather have a board game that you can play that's of a lesser quality. At least we have it, versus thousands of games will never be created because of just the inability to get it out there.
Thousands of games are never created for that exact purpose. Yeah, there are so many that rarely make it to where we are right now.
Yeah, like dice fights. If I did everything like the ideal way, American made, American artists, everything like that, it would be like $140 game.
No offense, brother, I would never pay $140.
We wouldn't.
I wouldn't either, right? And no one would. So it's like, hey guys, no one's gonna pay for this. You guys got to realize we got to make some changes, and maybe AI art will get that way. But as a small fry guy who's just starting out, I can't take that risk of doing AI art and getting blacklisted. There is actually now Hasbro, Hasbro's been talking about pumping out AI art. I think Wizards of the Coast as well, for things, because Magic the Gathering artists, they charge about $500-$600 a card, right? And they come out with so many cards. So if they can just replace that with AI art, they're making way more money.
No, video game developers are getting flack for it, but they realize that's the economical thing to do. It provides really cool artwork. I think the Call of Duty Zombies, people were talking about, I'm not going to play that anymore because they used AI. Well, guess what? Everyone's still playing it.
Yeah, and these big IPs can afford to do that because they I am very much in the niche hobby world, not in the giant sell to everyone world, right? And in the niche hobby world, all those guys don't want AI art. So
that matters. And I respect you for respecting them. They're the people who you have poured so much into those communities, and you respect it. And the only way to survive is to return that respect and live in that world. I mean, I think it's a matter of time before the stigma goes away, and it's like the whole coal miner thing. I mean, if your dad's a coal miner, natural gas is the enemy, and then if you have a wind farm, it changes. Technology changes, and if that's your livelihood, then yeah, you're going to fight for it. But I think it's a
but
generational
also if you can't
thing.
adapt, you're not going to survive.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use an example from my work, actually. So right now I'm teaching at a university. And the first semester that I started, the head department guy, whatever, was given a speech at the beginning of the
title?
year. Absolutely, 100% official.
Business cards.
They brought up that in our syllabi, we have to have a statement where we should have a statement about AI and whether it's acceptable to use in class or not. And I'm in a theater department, so at first, when he first said that, I was like, how in the heck is AI applicable in theater? But he went on and he said, look, if you're a teacher that wants to completely prohibit AI in your classroom, you're not going to keep being a teacher for very long. Like, you need to adapt. This is just a fact. AI is a part of our life now. We need to either accept it, or no, he said we need to accept it in the classroom and incorporate it so our students can use it correctly and wisely. If we try to just say no to it completely, they're just going to use it behind our backs and do crazy things with it. So, I mean, I teach a costume construction class, and he was telling me to have a statement about AI in it, and I was like, how is that applicable?
Can't use AI yet on building costumes.
Not building, but I just told my students, hey, you can use AI for inspiration for the stuff that we're making for your designs. Don't claim it as your own, but feel free to use it. I'm fine with that.
And I think that's going back to a point that you made, people using AI and then trying to sign it off as a actual human doing it. That's just dishonest, unethical. But if you're open about it and you're like, hey, I'm getting this game out there, this is the only way I can due to cost prohibition, then I don't know, I would take that into account in the full decision. But you are potentially taking a job away from someone. But are you really, though? Because if they're going to charge you $5,000 and you don't have that, then they don't have a job anyways. I mean, it's the quality of it. I think that those people who have the capability to look at the layers and actually put these images together, they're gonna have a place, but they need to understand that they now have other tools at their disposal, and I don't think we should stigmatize using them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, our community is not there yet.
Yeah,
so.
give it time.
Yeah, on Kickstarter, they actually have like a toggle to be like, used AI in this project, and then you can put a paragraph with like how exactly you used it, and then that's from the creator's standpoint, and then from you searching through products, you can actually put a filter, no AI use.
Interesting.
And so everyone who marked it, and then if you used AI art and people suspect you have used it, they can report you for using AI.
McCarthyism at its finest.
And then they essentially, you get blacklisted that way.
Which is such a bummer. I mean, look how cute those animals are.
Those are some cute ass animals.
We loved those animals, and
so
now we
these
have to
ones
get
on
rid
the
of
screen
them.
right now, those are the ones that you're talking about. You went to someone, you requested that they make some original art.
The animals of the landscape.
There's evidence that they may have been originally, if not fully AI, at least the base, and then they just added on their own.
Yeah, we believe it was AI assisted, and some indicators of that is they're not the same art style.
Got you. They are slightly different, aren't they?
Yeah, they're not the same art style. Even like the landscapes were all done by him as well, and so yeah, some of them have like water paint, and some of them are just digital blotches. You can't see it on the llama, but like one hoof is like enormous, and yeah, there's just little things. Right. We didn't know, right, until we took it to go start playtesting it with the board. I went to a board game convention with this to playtest it with people, and people were calling me out for it.
Instead of the actual game and play style, they're like, what the hell's with this art?
Because that's the first thing you look at, right?
Yeah.
This is the selling point. And so, and then they played the game. They said, yeah, that's really fun. Probably going to need to change the art. And I'm like, oh, I already spent thousands of dollars.
So much money.
That's rough.
Yeah.
That is
Which
rough.
is the main reason it's not published yet, is because we had to restart with the art. And this time we were very careful.
Last year.
We didn't go to Fiverr. We found someone here in the U.S., even Utah local, and she's great. We enjoy working with her. The art that she's given us is wonderful. I don't have any of it up on the website, but it's a lot slower and it's a lot more expensive.
Yeah. Even finding someone who's just getting started, who want the experience for a lower cost, is going to be much, much more expensive. But that's growth, that's learning, that's trying to grind, get your way to the top. Because once you have a more exposure, maybe you have enough board games under you to, get some distributors interested in you. And we never really got to that portion of it, but you're going to have the ability to do it, quote unquote, the right way, the way that the community that supported you, that got you there.
Yeah, exactly.
And because I do really enjoy the board game community. It's full of people who they're like they're the ones going for GameStop, right? If you're familiar with that whole situation, they're doing it because it's like, all right, let's support the little guy, let's take care of each other. And from that perspective, I get it. I do. I think it's just a matter of time, though, that we're all evolving. The industry is evolving, and I think the best, I guess, that we've talked about, the way to explain how I feel about it, is that past artists used to look down on digital art, and now that is the basic. That's the go-to. That's the only way to do it.
I'm sure there was a seamstress out there who was sewing her little fingers to death that when the machine came out was like, oh, absolutely not.
Of course, absolutely. So being able to look at it long term, I think it's just a generation way of being a little bit more accepted. But I think you're doing the right thing of taking the concerns of the people who are supporting you and making it in an art form they will support.
Yeah, I mean, we're only here because people keep playing dice fights for some reason.
Like it.
I'm still shocked every day.
I'm not shocked anymore.
No, the first game you showed me was Terraform, but it was back when it was like cardboard. It was written on stuff. The rules were just really not fleshed out, as we've talked about. That's very difficult, and it was a nightmare. Like I enjoyed it because it was exciting having my brother create something, but it was like, as a game, I'm like, let's keep working on it. But the second I saw dice fights, and granted, I did see dice fights, you'd already put a lot of thought and processing. And we've talked on the past episode about how you got this game to as balanced as it is, with like minimal playthroughs, which is just a huge blessing. The first time I played dice fights, I'm like, oh, it's a matter of time before I'm going to see this in Walmart. Like when people play it, the ease of playing it, the fun, the age range that you can play it, I've always thought it was fantastic. And
we're very excited for the Kickstarter. We've had to put it off a couple of times. Like, this was originally supposed to be published last year, Healer Still, but we're finally just hitting the gas with it. We need to do it. We need to get more games because we're 100% sold out of dice fights. Mm-hmm. So as a business, I mean, we can't live unless we get more products to sell. So we're excited. We're doing it, whether we're a little scared or not.
Yeah, the impending tariffs coming up, they are scary. It's mainly the unknown that's scary, because it could just raise our cost by some unknown amount.
10%, 50%, 100%, depending on...
200 was thrown out at one point, and they're like, oh, he's just negotiating. Like, well, you're negotiating with my feelings and my desire to want to do this. Like, I am in a just straight panic because if I run this game under the assumption it's going to be X price, because you can't really plan for anywhere from 5 to 200%. Like, of a raise. You just got to like keep moving forward and living your life, and then you might find out, oh, actually Woodstock Games, we have to close our doors because no longer possible.
That's the problem. Raising the tariffs isn't going to fix what he wants it to fix is not going to bring jobs back to the U.S. It's either going to close companies or it's going to push the price off onto the buyer.
Well, it's going to help the big guys, right? So if you're
we're not the big
Hasbro,
guys.
then you can put some capital towards actually manufacturing in the U.S. and use the actual artists versus AI. But it completely undermines the small business side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in general, most people are going to want to support small business because that's how we get big business. We do not want monopolies for obvious reason unless it's a Hasbro game called Monopoly.
And even then, do you really want that game? The credit card one is actually quite nice.
The card game Monopoly.
Oh, yeah.
Is that? Oh, yeah. The Monopoly, the card game, fantastic.
Oh, yeah. They came out with one that you have a credit card that you just swipe, and it makes the game exact same game, but it makes the game play like 25 minutes.
Oh, that's cool.
Because it does all the math. You're not having to like trying to do stuff. So every time you buy stuff, you just swipe a credit card. It adds it, takes away every time. It's wild.
They need to go next step because everyone's got a smartphone and just have like a tap to pay. Everyone gets their smartphone. Tap to pay Monopoly.
Hasbro, you heard it first.
I will take a 0.01%.
But only for 10 years, and then they kick you off.
All right, I'll take a 1%.
Hasbro's brutal.
Any large company is, right? And so we think about all of the changes that have been happening, and I find it disheartening in some ways because I'll sit there and have an argument with someone, and we both want the same thing, but when you understand the bigger picture, they're voting for something that's actually against what they want. They just don't realize it. It's so black and white in some of our minds that we don't see that, the effect of actually doing this, which, bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. sounds amazing, but then you look at the reality of it and you look at basic economic principles, and it's not, that won't happen. No, that will happen because I'm not going to pay $140 for a game that really should be priced at $30 or lower. All of a sudden you completely take out all the competition that lowers prices, creates higher quality, creates more jobs. But no one thinks of that.
Well, what it's really going to do, in my opinion, is it's going to take away creative things. Like all of these cool creative toys and games and this and that, they're just going to disappear, and we're only going to be left with necessities like, hey, like, let's go back to a rag doll because I can't buy a $60 Elsa doll.
I have to make my own toys now.
Have to make my own toy.
The good old days. Tradition, baby.
Now we're just putting twine around a rag and saying, it's an octopus. Congratulations.
We are knocking on that, but my whole life I've always wanted a hoop and a stick to play with because that looks so fun, and I've never been able to do that. We need to bring back the hoop and the stick.
I think I saw a barrel out back. We could make a hoop and stick 10 minutes max. We can fulfill a dream for you today, Jace.
We're doing this. Actually, one of the rings fell off the barrel because it got too cold, so we don't even have to dismantle my barrel.
Oh my.
Guess what I'm doing after this podcast?
Actually, you know what? I'm pro-Trump tariffs. Look at us. We're going to be making toys and living our lives.
We are making America great again.
I mean,
one hoop at a time.
I'll no longer have a board game business, but at least I can make toys. I will be the new Santa Claus.
I want to come back to your other game, your Terraform. I want to make it clear that the playthrough experience I had at first and where it's currently at now, drastically different. When we had our family reunion, I decided to make it board game based because I never get to play board games because all of my friends are in Texas. We like to do other shit, right? And so they put up with me forcing them to play games, but we're going to play the same one over again. It's like, I know how to play Catan, let's do that. But they don't want to expand out, right? So when I go back to Utah with my brothers, I'm like, let's play some like new crazy games like Arkham Asylum and Talisman, these nerdy geeky games that really are just so good and everyone should learn to enjoy. But when you pulled out your I don't know if it's your final form of Terraform, but it's really much closer.
It is a beta. The previous ones were like Zeta, but this one's a beta. I don't know if that's a real term or not, but
it makes sense. I looked forward to playing it again in this last iteration. I would be lying if I said that about the Zeta version
you
that
didn't
we played.
I think you actually played the xylophone version. I don't know, not quite the first version. The first version we were using Magic card decks, and the playthrough took 4 hours.
4 hours?
4 hours.
That's not too bad.
And instead of like 4 choices, there's 5 choices, and it was just, and all the cards were revealed. So, and I picked the most analytical type of people to play. They're like all play chess and things like that. So everyone was looking at the 40 different options everyone could do before they put any card down. It was brutal. So yeah, now we got gameplay down to 45 minutes. So that
the instructions are much more clear. You have some
Thank you.
assistive devices.
Yeah,
Thank you, Rebecca.
That is definitely Rebecca right there.
So, Rebecca, you said something that you didn't have any experience in designing board games, but you do have a big background in design, right?
Yeah. I am a costumer at heart, and so in college, I did take all of the costume design classes, and it's kind of hard to see the lap over of costume design to graphic design, but yeah, I have a understanding of design and where you want the eyes to flow when you're looking at something, and if you have a color here, then you need to have it repeated here so that you can bring the whole design together. So yeah, I have a bit of a background in it, I guess.
Would you say that you are a seamstress, or like what's your because currently you recently just got hired at one of the premier what would you call it,
It's a local regional theater, which has, in my opinion, I think some of the most fantastic productions, because it's this outdoor area and they use the red rocks and cliffs in the actual production, which is fantastic. But what are you going to be doing at your new position? So title is actually a big argument sort of in the costuming world, because seamstress is pretty gender specific, a lot of people would say. And if you ever hear someone, this is going to be a tiny little soapbox to be on, say to you that tailor is the male version of seamstress, that is absolutely incorrect. Being a tailor is a specific field of work in the seamstress community. It's working on men's clothing, and it does not mean you are a man.
So you can be a female tailor, but it's specifically for males,
for male clothing? Wear, yeah. So anyways, that aside, I'm not
going to get into the whole non-binary thing, because I don't know what you'd call them at that point.
I call myself a seamstress most of the time, but a wider, broader term to cover a lot of different titles is costume technician, at least in the theater world. Stitcher is thrown out as a person who is the one sitting at the machine doing the physical work, which is what I will be when I go back to Tuacahn this year, because my teaching position at the university doesn't end until like almost the end of their build season, so I'll be part-time. Build season,
what's that?
It's the term for the amount of time that it takes to put the costumes on the stage. Even if, and we're not actually building the costumes from scratch this year at Tuacahn, we're still calling it a build season, which is interesting to me, but that's okay. But it's the amount of time. So Tuacahn itself has its own season of when the shows are open, but the build season is like 3 to 4 months before the shows open. So during that time, I'm just going to be a stitcher, and then this is kind of a fun aspect of the theater world, is you kind of work in contracts, and your title will often jump around. So I'm going to be a stitcher, and then I'll be a costume assistant, costume department assistant, I think was the official title. And then for their winter show, she's going to move me up to show assistant, which is a more leadership role, so to say.
What production y'all getting ready for?
No, that's an embarrassing question to ask. I don't think I know this season's lineup.
Oh, gosh.
I know that the winter show, we are doing Elf.
Oh, Elf. I didn't know they had a theater version of that.
Yeah, aren't they doing Little Mermaid again or something?
Yeah, we're doing The Little Mermaid again, which is so unfortunate. I hate that show.
Yeah, for those of you watching the video, we got some images of the, maybe Adrian can throw that up. St. George is one of the most beautiful places that I took for granted when I was a kid. I thought it was ugly because it was just brown is how I saw it.
I thought that for a long time until I spent some time in Zion with you, Chase.
I think I spoke about that on my last podcast. For those of you who want more details on what we're talking about, you can go listen to that one. But I agree. That's exactly when I decided that Southern Utah was one of the most gorgeous places. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I'm excited to get this Kickstarter up and running. I've very much been your brother. I support you in absolutely everything. I have told you and will continue to tell you when you have stupid, shitty ideas.
And I have many.
The amount of times we've talked shop late at night, and I'm like, no, just move on. And you've done the same to me.
I appreciate that sometimes, Chase. Sometimes you say the things that I can't as the wife.
But I'm very excited when you come to me with an idea. And I'm like, Daniel, that's a great idea. And this is one of them. And to see it progress and become like a real thing that, I mean, we did a couple playthroughs earlier today that, like, I look forward to seeing more that's coming out, because you do have a great idea of what the board game community actually looks for with things. The balance alone, something that you don't think of when you're playing a game, but if you've played enough games and then you pick one up and it doesn't have a good balance to it, and maybe there's a specific term in the board game community, but to me it's like you don't want one class that just destroys everyone else. In video games, you're constantly updating it, because as a competitive gamer, which I like what's the point of playing a game unless you're gonna win? I know that that's not how everyone sees games, but I like to have the ability to like play competitively, use your brain, think about, all right, how can I get an edge there? And you've done a fantastic job of this. I'm really excited to see the final form of Terraform. Still have no idea what River Rats is, but you've brought that up a few times.
I'm pretty excited about it.
The grin on your face right now tells everything.
Yeah, it's very much just in my brain. So what I do when I'm not creating board games is I'm a director of operations at a dude ranch at the Grand Canyon, called the Bar 10 Ranch. We facilitate river rafters coming on and off the Grand Canyon. So they'll go on like anywhere from like a 6 to a 14-day river trip, and then they'll end, and we'll pick them up via helicopter, bring them up to the lodge, put them on an airplane, send them away, horseback rides, skeet shooting, ATV tours. It's a pretty cool spot, right?
Rachel, you ready to go? Let's do it.
Hey, anytime you want to come down for free, let's do it. So super cool spot. And so I'm staring at this all the time, but I also make board games. And so what they often call river rafters, who are just like river rafting junkies, they call them river rats. And so that's where the name comes from. So essentially, River Rats Grand Canyon it is going to be your journey going through that. So the first phase is going to be drafting a deck, aka loading your boat up with your passengers and cargo and things like that. And you're basically going to be
Oregon Trail. I'm an old 80s baby. That's
the
first
Oregon
thing
Trail, but river, and then you use your
fun.
deck to then go through the rapids, and you draw rapid cards, and depending on the stuff that you drafted earlier into your deck is how well you do. And then at the end, you have to load up a helicopter and get out, and whoever does that easiest if you do really poorly on the rapids, you lose passengers and cargo and things like that. So loading out's really easy, but you kind of lost a bunch of points because you did bad. So it's a balancing tactic. But that's essentially, other than losing passengers, a river rafting trip in the Grand Canyon. So,
and sometimes losing passengers. Not Bar 10 Ranch, though. Never.
Yeah, well, there's a book called Death in the Grand Canyon that we actually sell on our trading post there. It's like almost like a 600-page book of stories of people dying in the Grand Canyon. It is, they have a whole series. There's like Death in Yosemite, Death in Zion. They have a lot of national parks of just people dying in national parks. It is wild, but I mean, it does happen where when you do really exciting, fun things, there's chances for things to go down. A really big thing that can happen in the Grand Canyon is just flash floods. Like people are hanging out, hiking in these slot canyons, and then it starts storming, and if you're camped at the bottom of a slot canyon, you're going to get washed into the Colorado River. It's not going to turn out great.
End up at the Hoover Dam.
Well, yeah.
Wait, does it goes
Yep.
from Grand Canyon to Hoover Dam, right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
you started in Marble Canyon area. There's Lake Powell, right? And then the Colorado River goes all the way down to Lake Mead, and that's where the Hoover Dam is.
So your next iteration of River Rats is going to be the Texas edition. It'll all about just being lazy with the beer belly and getting drunk.
Well, that's the thing that's kind of exciting me about River Rats a little bit is you can do River Rats Guadalupe, River Rats Rogue River, River Rats. There's so many super well-known rivers to recreate on.
We'll do a drinking game San Marcos that'll be marketed to the college crowds.
San Marcos.
Shout out to
River Rats, San
Bobcats,
Marcos.
Texas State, let's go.
Oh, yeah. I know all of those things.
But that job also gives him 2 hours in a van driving back and forth from work. That allows him a lot of time to come up with ideas like this.
80 miles on a dirt road to get out to the ranch. So that's actually why I came up with Terraform, is because I was just driving in the car looking at the landscape changing. I'm like, I wonder if I can make a board game where the landscapes change. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. That was a really good impression, I know, of driving a van.
He often will come home from a shift with new ideas. I've almost started to prepare myself mentally. All right, Daniel's getting home. What new ideas am I going to hear today?
Change the diaper first, Daniel. Well, thanks for coming down. We have some board games to play today. I want to do a few playthroughs. You say there's a new upcoming game you want to play, something about a gnome?
Yeah, Gnome Hollow by Ammon, and I forgot his last name. Really up-and-coming game. It just funded on Kickstarter in the past year or so. I think
BGG.
it's BGG. I don't know where it's rated, but it is raising up in the rankings of BGG. People really love it. There's
Awesome. 2 to 4 players, 40 to 60 minutes, ages 12 and up.
Yeah. And you
then-
essentially are a little gnome going around making gnome circles. And
Yeah, I do like that you, in
mushrooms.
your social media posts, you do a lot of other people's games and highlight games that you like. Again, going back to the community, the support of it. Your Kickstarter, what do they need to be looking for? Just type in Dice Fights in Kickstarter and it'll pop up?
It actually will come up really quickly, which I already am using that as an ego booster. When you go to Kickstarter, if you just type in Dice Fights, I think it's like the 3rd or 4th game that comes up. So you go to Kickstarter, type that in. If you want to get real detailed, you can type in Dice Fights Heal or Steal. And then just click that follow button. And when we launch, you'll get an email.
There it
That's
is.
our old one.
404, not found.
Yeah, it's that second link. There you go.
Okay, roll the boxes.
So
Roll the
notify
dice.
me if you don't already have a Kickstarter. All you have to do is sign up. It's free, super easy and quick. And then you'll get an email when we launch that says back this game, and you'll have, I think we're going to be running this for 20 days, so you'll have 20 days to back it. But we're hoping that we hit our goal in the first 24 to 48 hours.
Fantastic. Woodstock Games, WoodstockGames.com?
WoodstockGames.com is our
Nice.
website.
Mm-hmm.
Our email, unfortunately, was already claimed when we started our business, so our email is gamesbywoodstock@gmail.com.
Awesome. I can't express enough how excited I am for really just the vision that you've shown me of like where you want to take this. I'm excited. I'm definitely going to force you to publish one of my own games, even though
Let's do
it's going to be more of a pet project. I've already batted heads with you. That's not a term. Bumped heads?
Butt heads.
Butted
Butted
heads.
heads. That's what you were
Butted
going
heads.
I'm focused on the butt of it too much.
We
Anyways,
have butted heads. Adrian, cut that part out. But thanks for coming. Let's get to playing some more games, guys.
Great.
Amen.
Love you, brother.
Love
Love you, sister.
Love you, brother.